Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer. Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona. With me always are my good friends,
Jay from the hills of Texas,
and AK Mike back in Texas.
And we would like to welcome you to the show. We just got back from the Arizona Electric Festival, and if you've been listening over the last couple of weeks, you'll kind of got up to date. We had a 2-day event, more than a 3-day event, I think. But we wound up actually staying Saturday night for the night fly, and then Sunday morning as well for a little bit. We flew some stuff there as well. But I just got, we kind of wanted to recap a little bit of our Saturday night because Mike and I did the night fly with the Walrus, and it seemed to have been both of our sort I'm looking for. It came to the realization to the both of us that the airplane, as it started to gain altitude, was no longer looking like an airplane. It was looking like a purple blob. And we have decided that maybe our eyes getting older, it's not as, and Mike was a little uncomfortable, I think, flying it because it just turned into this purple spot as opposed to flying. And
well, and I thought about that for a little bit too, Mike. It's possible that it's, I just recently got new glasses within the last couple of months, and I haven't flown at night with them. So it's possible that they're not really in a space to, they're not dialed in for
and that
flight.
may be the case.
So in my case, that might be what's going on.
And
I didn't feel like you were having trouble, so maybe it's just me. And I appreciate you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a little,
some of that, but
yeah, I think there was a little bit of a breeze, and I don't know what it was with my eyes this weekend, but every time I looked down the runway towards into the wind, my eyes would all water up, and I'd be like, "Oh, I can't see anything," because I'm like looking through water lenses, and I think that every time Mike was like, "Okay, I don't got this, it's not working," and he would hand me the controller, and I'd be like, "Okay, it's all blurry to me anyway." So I bring it down
because the water in your eyes.
Yeah, because I'd be staring at him into there. But anyway, we had a really fun time in the night fly. We kind of closed out that evening with Shannon, as you heard from our last episode. And then everybody kind of made their way to, their own individual evenings. And so several people packed up and, we're trying to get out before the rush on Sunday. And Mike and I found ourselves, because we're kind of the nighttime security, we found ourselves with nothing to do in the middle of the night. So I've recently purchased a night vapor, and it was new in the box, and we tried to fly it the night before and got it trapped on the Armada.
And when he means we, he's really talking about him. I had to throw you under the bus, Mike, because the thing is when you get that thing out of the box, it flies nose up. And I remember when we used to fly this in Alaska, that's the way we would fly him, nose up. That thing would just be like really poking along, and and it's kind of like a 3D plane. And because it was windy enough, it wasn't very windy, but it was windy enough. It just carried that thing on the top of, like in an instant, it was on top of that, that roof. And so we had to improvise and put some picnic tables together to get up on top of the roof to get the airplane.
We did. And it's funny because we wandered around there for a little bit knowing that thing was up there. And I tried to see if it was upright, to fly it. And
he's standing on the edge of the trash can, trying not to fall into the trash can on the edge of the fence. I was
would have been
he's going to kill himself. He's going to kill himself.
Yeah, pretty much. I was hanging on for dear life, and I'm just barely looking over. Like I can pull myself up and just see it. And I'm like, dang it. I can see where it's at, and it's upside down. And that
I'm just saying, thank God he could hold on to something because he would have been on his butt.
Yeah, I would have. It was, and my wife would have just been, yelling at me the whole time.
She might now if she listens to this. Yeah,
exactly. Anyway, as Mike pointed out, we were a little bit resourceful because I thought at one point they had a ladder. That was
they
out.
Probably did,
and I'm sure it was probably somewhere, but
or it was in the closed locked.
Yes,
I think that's where they had one.
It's probably so. Anyway, I was like, well, I just need to stack something on top. And so I was trying to convince Mike to actually let me get on his shoulders and then him climb the fence. But he
was like, I lost 30 pounds. So
he was a no-go.
It should be a do.
I know. Right. So I told him, I was like, okay, so you don't really think that climbing the fence with me on your back is a safe deal to, safe thing to do? He's like, no.
If my last name was Valenza, definitely.
So anyway, long story short, we got some picnic tables. We stacked them on top of each other and we climbed up. But the bad news is that now there's footprints all over the top of the tables. And I felt really bad because we're having a pizza party, the next day. And so I've got like a paper towel. I'm trying to rub all the feet print off the top of it.
Get the evidence on.
Well, anybody who put their pizza on the top of those tables anyway,
That's true. Right? That's true.
They're rough people.
We did have plates. We did have plates.
Exactly.
So anyway, we got the night vapor down, and we tried. That was it for the night.
Modifications to it. Yeah, that's right.
That was it for the night because we decided, it's going to happen again because the wind was kind of getting out of hand, and that was Friday night.
That was Friday night. Right?
Saturday night, we got back right. We found ourselves with nothing to do, and so we got the vapor back out. And I said, well, I really want to do this vapor. There's no wind. Everybody's gone. There's just the lights, kind of the lights under the Armada, how they leave them on for night security. And Mike and I are standing there. And it's really not that cold. I mean, it was cold the first night, but it wasn't really that cold. So he and I weren't like shivering at all. And so I got the transmitter, we fired it up, and, he's like, we should go out to the runway. And I'm like, dude, it's at nighttime and I'm trying to maiden this thing. And we have light in here. I only have to fly it around like this table, right? I mean, I know it has lights on it, but you're trying to get me to trim it out and do all that stuff in the dark. I should have done it during the daytime, but it's one of it's one of those things. And I'm like, if we fly inside the Armada part right here, not only is there no wind, but I can see it. So I said, just set it down. And he's like, okay, it's going to go on top of the Armada again. I'm going to keep it under the Armada. He's like, okay. So I took off and kind of was flying around really low to the ground. I got it all trimmed up, and then it was basically flying hands off. And we found out that there's a little like a gear on it that if you crash it, it pushes the gear forward, and now the rudder won't work. So we found that out because we kind of ran it into I thought I was going to hit the fence. So I chopped the throttle and it kind of, ran into the ground, and then he picked it up and, set it down. I took off again, and now it won't turn. So it's just going, right out in the middle of, towards the tables and the Armada and stuff. So I chopped the power and almost landed on the table, which gave me an idea. So I picked it up. I set it on the table. Mike fixed the little gear on it, said it's okay. He was going to set it back down. I was like, no, leave it on the table. So I took off from the table. And so I flew around the Armada and, in between everything. And he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I go, I'm going to try and land on the table. So I came
Instant aircraft carrier.
Yeah, instant, right? And we just touched down. And then the next thing you know, boom, it just it falls off the table. And we didn't do a very good job of collecting on the carrier itself. But it did give us an idea. And so as a result, we, definitely tried to do it again. And so I was able to do it, and then we flew it around through a battery, which lasts, surprisingly, Mike, it lasts a long time.
It did.
The battery lasted probably, I don't know, 8 minutes maybe. So I landed on the table a long ways a couple of times, and then I said, okay, your turn. And so I gave it to Mike. We switched batteries, and then Mike was trying to land it on the table. And so he did. He was successful. And so then we started giggling like two schoolgirls. I mean, we were just laughing, and we were flying it across the tables. We were landing on the table and then skipping to the next table, and then, flying around. And then I started flying it around like all of the tables. So I was like going in and out and around the fence and out into the parking lot and then around. And it just was a good time. We were having a really good time.
What was funny to me, Mike, was we were trimming it out and trying out different trim positions for the elevator because, first it was like totally nose up and just sort of, flying almost 3D like, and you're like, that's not going to work for me. So you changed the elevator and you put it so that, like, now it's like a speed demon relative to the vapor.
That's true.
And the thing was racing around, and it was harder to land on the table because you're just booking. I mean, it's just going full out. Like you could hit the front of the table, but then you'd roll out all the way to the end of the table. It's like, that's not going to do it for me. Yeah, that's not going to do it for me. So you adjusted it so it was a little bit nose up. But if you didn't have it completely level like that, the rudder was almost useless. So with a little bit of wind, you needed to have rudder. So it needed to have more elevator there so that would be flat
Right.
as it flew.
Right.
And that to me was the funny thing. It's like, it's going too fast. I was like, it's a vapor, dude.
Mike was like, "This
right.
is great. It's exactly how it should be." I'm like, "No, dude, this thing is flying way too fast. I mean, I'm at half throttle, and this thing is like booking around. You know?"
Yeah, that's a phrase you never would think you'd hear for a vapor.
For a
This is
vapor,
way too
right?
fast.
I think they call that an
Way too
oxymoron.
bad. Yes, pretty much. But anyway, it was a good time, and we were just getting ready to switch batteries. I was flying it around, and a car pulled up, and this couple, kind of pulls up. Mike walks over. "Hey, can I help you?" And they were looking for the Nightfly.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, you're here. Here he is, right here, the one guy flying in the Nightfly." And about that time, the battery went boom, and I was headed. Was gonna fly out in front of their car because they were sitting, like in the parking lot, and I was gonna fly like around the front of the car and then come back. And they had their windows down. I for about a second I thought about flying through the window, but
you might have scared them.
Wouldn't have been a smart thing to do.
Super kosher. Yeah.
Yeah.
They might have swatted it. It's a mosquito bat.
And ruined my vapor.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Mike introduces himself, and let's we can kind of talk about it because they're a very interesting group.
So we meet
nice
Montana and Rochelle, and he's a young couple. He's got his own business, auto detailing business, not cleaning your car, but like doing paint,
touch-up work,
and body work and some other stuff,
right.
and it's pretty cool stuff. And so we just started chatting with him, and he was like, "Yeah, we came one time, and we were sitting in the bleachers, and it was kind of cool, and we enjoyed it. But then, and then Rochelle speaks up, like, yeah, so I got him a plane for Christmas.
Yeah,
and so he's got this plane, and so Montana does what I see more and more people do, that I wouldn't have done because I'm just too chicken. He just went out and flew. He took this plane." It has safe technology or that kind of idea. And he just started flying. And, thankfully for him, it can fly fairly easy with this, gyro and whatnot set up. And so he just basically said, "Yeah, I've crashed this thing 100 times. One of the cool things about the plane that he had was the prop comes off. It's a little hub attachment, and it just pops right off. So it wouldn't bend the motor or won't break the props. I mean, I think we broke one prop, but while we were flying, but it's kind of a good setup. And I think he did painting on one of them at least.
He did.
And
he did a custom.
It was a
paint
beautiful paint job.
It was amazing
for him. It changed the weight of things.
Yes,
and it just doesn't fly like it did. And so, but now he's just going to hang it up on the mobile or something and show it off or something. Say put up on the shelf, whatever. But yeah, they were cool, and both he and his wife Rochelle want to be pilots, like they want to fly.
Right.
He flies all the time, and so Mike, what would you add to that?
Well, so the interesting thing when they showed up is that they were excited about the RC hobby, and they wanted to see the Nightfly. So just to kind of back up, they have a 5-week-old baby, and their mom was babysitting, and she said, go on a date, just go out, take some time, because she wanted to be with the new baby, and the baby was sleeping anyway. So, Montana's like, "Hey, let's go over to that RC event," because they just live like 5 miles down the road. Unfortunately, they had gone out, and then on their way back, they swung in, and things were pretty much winding down, and it was just Mike and I flying the Vapor. But it gave them the opportunity to get an audience with us, right? And so we kind of took advantage of that, and we, kind of started chit-chatting with them, and they super nice. They got out of the car, and we kind of walked them around, and they were telling us about these little airplanes. Now, the airplanes that they bought are about the UMX size aircraft. They're not big, so they're they got them off of Amazon, and I think they sell them at Superstition Hobbies too. It's Rage RC. They're these little, they come with a controller and everything, but they have these 3 modes, and they were talking about how difficult it was to fly these things, except on beginner mode. In the beginner mode,
intermediate,
or intermediate. He said, "I just started flying intermediate," but he said beginner mode, I'm I'm better at that. And then, I just fly full throttle all the time. So he said, I just, toss it and then I go full throttle. And then I turn around and I go, well, does it have a rudder channel? And he goes, oh yeah. And I go, it's got rudder? And he goes, yeah. And it's got elevators and it's got ailerons. I go, so you have all 3 axes in this little bitty plane? Because I'm flying this one around, only has 2 axes, right? It's got the elevator and a rudder. And so he goes, yeah, it's all 3. They fly, they do really well. And she's like, yeah, I have one too. And then we had so much fun with them that we bought like 3 or 4 more. So we have all these different airplanes, but some of them just don't fly well. And I was like, well, that's kind of strange. I don't know why they wouldn't, or, they're micro. So, I don't know, So we kind of took them around and we were explaining the difference, between the Trojans and the jets. And he mentioned, oh, I have a Habu. I was like,
really?
What? Yeah. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, my wife bought it for me. And so I've already flown it like twice. Now I will tell you that he took off, flew it around. And from what I understand, the landing kind of got him because, landing these little airplanes and landing that Habu he was flying in his, front yard, just wasn't the place to be flying that fast jet. So it did have some, bumps on it and some bruises, if I'm not mistaken, from what I gathered. But, we really didn't go into, he obviously does body repair stuff. So he had repaired, and like Mike said, he had painted, this particular airplane he painted was a Spitfire. And he had crashed it, put it back together, glued some stuff. He ripped the tail wheel off or something. And so he put some glue in there. And he told us that the airplane was just like, up and down, up and down, up and down. He was very hard to control. And Mike goes, well, maybe it's out of CG since you put hot glue in the back. And I started laughing and I said, you live in Arizona. I wouldn't put hot glue anywhere in Arizona because,
no.
Once you start flying it in the summertime, you won't have any hot glue back there anymore, And, but they were interested. It was kind of refreshing, and they spent probably 30, 40 minutes with us, just walking around, looking at airplanes, asking all these questions, which were just phenomenal for someone that is getting, kind of the spark to get new, these little airplanes. And then they were asking all kinds of questions like, well, how come it does this? Or, what would cause it to do this? And I was really impressed with how much they had gained knowledge wise just by trial and error.
Yeah,
I mean,
clearly
they really
a smart
didn't know.
couple. Both of them were clearly smart.
Like very, very, very
definitely
intelligent.
brains on their head.
Now, did either one of you two hand them a card? One of our cards, because you're
yes, we did.
You did. You guys actually brought cards.
Believe it or not, Jay, both of us brought a stack of business cards. Yeah, and Mike's mainly because we knew you weren't going to be there, so we had to. Oh crap! I got to bring you because Jay's not going to be there. But Mike's goal was to hand out all of them, and he came pretty close.
I did.
Yeah,
good job.
So we did.
Yep.
And we talked to, they were excited. They were like, oh, wow, you podcast really on RC? I'm like, yeah, you should listen. So hopefully they'll listen. And, of course, we're talking about them. So
to that end, Mike, to that end, I actually reached out and got a hold of Montana and Rochelle.
That's awesome. You mean since then?
Yeah. So after they came back Sunday and
they did come back Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. They came back Sunday and we flew, they brought their planes. And then Mike showed them how a plane should be flown. And
I trimmed it out actually.
Well, and this is in the expert mode, and they're like, that looks like beginner mode. He goes, nope, it's expert. And then he does a barrel roll, and they're like, oh wow, it can do a barrel roll. It's like, yeah, you can fly it. And now those things have buttons to do loops and barrel rolls and stuff if you want, but Mike likes to do it for real. So he was flying inverted and stuff, and he's like, oh my god, that plane's flying upside down. And
they were somewhat impressed, I think. So
yeah, it was. But
I was impressed because when I first saw this airplane, I first thing I thought was, well, it's way out of balance, So, but he did a good job because Mike had mentioned the night before, maybe you should put, if the airplane flies all pitchy, put a little hot glue in the nose section and kind of balance it out. And he's like, yeah, okay. So he did, but. I don't know how much was in the back.
It helped a lot.
But I don't know how much he put in the back, and I don't know how much he was going to put in the front. He could have unloaded a whole stick.
I think he probably could have put more up front
a stick or two.
The way it was
maybe. maybe.
Yeah.
But I took the wingtips, I balanced it where it should be bounced, and it was sitting perfectly. But he had custom painted it,
or elevator was off or something. Remember?
Yeah, it just had a little twist in the back end of it, which I don't think really would have affected too much of it. But he did have it custom painted and airbrushed with his daughter's name on it, and I was like, wow, awesome. This is a little heavier. I mean, because it had been clear coated and it was bright pink, and it was a really nice paint job. I really like paint job.
It was beautiful. Like, I can't wait to see, like, if he gets a hold of a bigger plane, a real plane, and he paints it, because then he'll be able to paint it without affecting it so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Mike's correct. They came out Sunday. They brought these little airplanes. He bought a whole bunch of batteries, and he's like, "Hey man, we just want to see somebody that we can understand that can fly this." To see if it's really worth the investment, right? Because we own a couple of them, and we were thinking about buying some more because they have a whole, group of them, but they're fairly expensive. They're about $100 or a little over $100, and so he said, let's bind it. So I said, yeah, sure, we can go fly it and see. And so I took off in the beginner mode, and it was incredibly pitchy. But I got it slowed down. I got it flying back around. I took it out of beginner, went into intermediate, and I liked intermediate better. And so I was flying around intermediate, and but it was still really pitchy. I mean, if you just even move the stick, the thing would just start porpoising. And I thought, he goes, is that in expert or beginner? I said, well, it's in intermediate right now. And so I went up a couple mistakes high, and which for that thing is 30 or 40 feet, and I clicked it into expert mode. And as soon as I went to expert mode, it departed control flight. I mean, it literally. And I was like, he told us that if you just flick it back to beginner mode, it would level itself out. Yeah, that airplane, not even close. So it went into this death spiral. I pulled the power off. I tried to push the nose over and get it all, ready to, recover.
I think you need another 50 feet before you could have recovered that, Mike.
Probably so, because it was wrapped up pretty tight.
Yeah, it did.
And it hit nose first. So
it corkscrewed down.
Yeah, it corkscrewed pretty quickly.
But it didn't really damage the plane. It broke the prop, but it didn't really damage the plane at all. I mean, if you look at the plane, it was like in reasonably good shape, except for the fact that it's not, the CG was off, as we believe.
Were these planes EPP or just regular foam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were EPP.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he goes... He said, "Oh, that's okay." I said, "Well, this one's a little troublesome. It may be worth getting a new one, or if you're going to fly it." But he goes, "Well, this one is a Corsair. It flies great." And he had painted the nose of this Corsair. He had scratched the nose, so he had repainted it from yellow, because it was yellow and blue, to pink, the same color as that the Spitfire was, because he had the paint. So it was bright pink, and it had bright pink wingtips on it. So he had changed the color scheme, but it was really cool. And so I took off, and as soon as I took off, I flipped it into intermediate mode and was flying it around. Got it all trimmed, because the thing does have trim, and it was a little out of trim. It wanted to climb and dive and do all these crazy things. And once I got it trimmed up, I just held the controller up. I said, this is hands off in intermediate. And then right then I flicked it to expert, and it just stayed level, because it's got a little gyro like a UMX. And so they're like, that's in expert mode? And I go, yep. And so then I ripped it around, and I did a couple of rolls, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a roll. And then I ripped it upside down and flew inverted down the runway. And, we're only flying like in a 20-foot radius right in front of us, while everybody else is like whipping around us. And, so it was fun. We had a good time. I landed it, we let Mike fly it, and Mike did just as good. And then they wanted to see a bigger airplane.
Upside down, though.
No, but you did, rolled it and some stuff. And then they wanted to see a bigger airplane fly. So I got my L-39 out, and I flew the L-39 for them. But
with the gear down, because, problem.
Yeah, the gear door was sticking, and the gear wasn't coming up, and I didn't want to.
Made you nervous.
Yeah, so anyway.
Well, go ahead.
You said you called him.
Yeah, so I called them. I called them, and so I talked to them and said, hey, it was really great to meet you guys, and we really enjoyed, having a conversation. And they were like, yeah, likewise, we really enjoyed. You guys gave us so many great tips. And so I was trying to figure out. I was asking them, what is it that you felt was helpful? And the way Rochelle put it was, yeah, we like the backstage pass.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? She goes, well, before we were sitting in the bleachers, but now we're like on the flight line talking to you guys. You're talking term of our ailerons, elevator, rudder, how does it work? What happens? Right. The different flight services and stuff. Because Mike did a nice short tutorial on what happens when you turn the plane sideways. Now the rudder becomes the elevator, and things like that. And then also they said, I said, well, what you just decided to start flying planes? He goes, yeah, I've always been. This is Montana talking. I always been into RC. I have cars and I had helicopters and stuff, but I never flew planes before. And I just decided, then Rochelle got this gift for me for Christmas, and so I just went out flying. And I said, like, okay, so yeah, you just crashed the thing? He goes, yeah, that's fine. I don't really care because I'm learning and I know I'm going to crash it. And just the way he approached it is different than I would have approached it. But I kind of like his method. If he's willing to part with money to be able to train himself via the crash method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these planes have that safe, quote unquote, technology stuff. So it doesn't really happen as often as you might think it would because of that stuff. It saves you from really kind of hurting yourself because you're flying it around. And then one thing Rochelle said, which I thought was funny, is, yeah, we've never really done podcasting before. So we went to listen to your podcast. We didn't know how to do it. Like at first it was kind of something they didn't. And I was like, wow, I didn't ever think of that. Like,
yeah,
that isn't a central part. But then we talked a little more. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Not a lot of even from 20 to 50, you talked about what's a podcast, and you get that a lot.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, well, I listen to podcasts because I'm on a drive, and I'm just going to get mad at everybody driving around me if I'm stuck in traffic. So I might as well listen to something that'll be entertaining, or where I can learn something. And so it was just great to talk to these people who were excited. I asked them, what's the kinds of things you think would help you, moving forward? And he goes, I don't really know yet. I'm just going to keep flying and crashing and doing whatever. But, the conversation that we had and the tips that Mike gave them and all that stuff, he said, in fact, Rochelle made a point of saying, yeah, when you went flying the other day, you were way better. Because I think Mike was talking about the Mike Barstow syndrome, which is banging the sticks left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Where you fly with aggressive behavior, I guess is what I would call it. And he said, yeah, you don't really need to push that hard. It's really soft. Plus, when you're using beginner mode, you have to push harder because it's designed that way.
Right.
And if you go to intermediate and you're pushing that hard, it's going to perform more wildly. Yeah. And then of course, expert's going to just turn it upend it. Right. And so it was just, a lot of good back and forth with them on their experience and what they plan to do. And I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say and how their adventure goes.
Yeah, and we actually took time to introduce them to Shannon on Sunday morning, and we got them hooked up to say, hey, look, you should really come out and fly with the club, because he took them in and he said, we have a club trainer. We could do wireless buddy box. We can let you kind of get out there. If you wanted to bring your jet out, we could, help you fly that too, where you're not crashing it all the time, and at least getting some stick time with someone that can save the jet and not have to repair it. So he was like, really? And we're like, yeah, it's all wireless now. You can just, sign up, and then, you come on in and learn to fly. So they were kind of excited about that too. And I think that the demo with both that airplane and the L-39 both, because I remember Rochelle was talking, she was I had them up at the flight line because initially they were standing like way back. And I'm like, no, if you want to see this, come up to the box. So stand in the box. And then I said, no, watch my fingers. And she's like, look, he's not even moving the sticks, and yet the airplane's doing all this stuff. And I told her, I said, well, yeah, if I really want to be aggressive, I can pull really hard on it and it'll, I tumbled it. And so Mike was explaining, yeah, he's really, aggressive with the sticks, but in the majority of the time he's flying, he's right in the middle, and they're just letting the airplane kind of do it. Because they mentioned that the airplane, when they went into a turn, it just dived to the ground. And I said, well, why? And he goes, I said, are you using the rudder? And he goes, oh, I don't ever touch that thing.
Yeah.
And so we kind of talked a little bit about aerodynamics and just, how this yank and bank. And that's why Mike was saying that. I said, when you yank it over into a 90-degree knife edge and you start pulling on it, that elevator acts as the rudder acts as an elevator, because it's facing this way now, not up and down, but horizontal. And you could see it in his face. He was like, oh yeah, because it kind of the light bulb kind of came on, and I'm like, so if you're not even using this part over here, you got to pull a little bit to kind of keep the nose up. And then that's interesting that you've talked to them, and she said that he got a little better after coming out and watching.
Right. Well, I know we got to wrap it up, but I do want to say that he said that watching was key to moving forward for him.
Oh, good.
And that he looked at the price of buying a simulator, and his answer to that was, well, I'll just better spend the money on another plane than buying a simulator. And you know what? I totally get that. We wouldn't have been able to do that because we built from sticks when we started.
Right.
So
right.
It's a normal suggestion for us to say you should use a flight simulator first. But now, in fact, he's not the only one who said that to me. I have a friend who just started getting into flying too, and he's like, I can fly this thing with no problem. Like, I don't even really need the simulator. It's like, okay,
yeah,
I get it, because the technology has come such a long way.
And it has, because honestly, he's right. I mean, how many times do you say he crashed that thing and just picks it up and puts the new prop on and just keeps on going? Where that's what the simulator does, right? Simulator allows you to crash, hit a button, and then just keep going. So if you have a smaller airplane that will do that for you, and it's the real thing, yeah, why spend the money on a simulator?
Right.
Because this airplane will do exactly the same thing.
Right.
Now, it may take him longer doing it on this airplane because he's flying something that is, if he's banging the sticks around. In his case, he got to come watch what, a pilot would do with these sticks, as opposed to trying to learn to go to the next mode and bang them around again. So we were able to kind of pull him out of some of that. So I think that, his explanation is valid, and I totally get where he's coming from. So more power to them.
Let me ask a quick question, guys. So he didn't get a chance to fly a bigger plane, like the Night Owl or whatever that you guys had.
No,
the Walrus.
The Walrus,
no.
Yeah. The
Walrus.
No.
Mm-mm.
So he didn't get a chance to fly Ladder or Bixler or any kind of plane like that.
No, we didn't have anything like that.
We were a little more cognizant of the fact that we are not club members, and we're at a club that that's why I introduced him to.
Well, no, I get why you did Shannon, but I figured, you probably broke that plane out and said, well, here, get on the sticks.
No, because they are
really
not, they're not AMA. We told them to join the AMA and then come back out. And
that's the second thing that they said they were going to do. It's like, they're totally on that. They're going to get on it because they want to. And they left me in the conversation with, one of the good things is we're connected with this club, and we're really excited about being around people, showing us what they can do, and learning more about what we need to be doing.
Gotcha.
Excellent. So, yeah. Well, that was really good. We had a good time. I was really impressed with both of them. So, and I'm wishing them the best of the luck. And they have our an email address. So if you actually wind up listening to this episode, the both of you can email us at theparkflyerpodcast@gmail.com, and feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to get back with you. I mean, I'll answer whatever questions you guys have. And obviously Mike has gotten in touch with them, which was kind of funny. He's got a really quick funny story though when he called him.
So I called him. I didn't have his phone number, so I had to look it up online, and I got it from Facebook, and then I dialed his number and left a voicemail. Of course, it doesn't say this is Montana from Mobile Auto Detailing. It just says leave a message for the phone number.
Right.
So I did, and he probably didn't pick up because who's going to answer a call from Alaska? Nobody knows anybody from Alaska,
right?
And so I get a call back a little bit later, and I recognize the number, so I answered it. And I go, hey, he goes, oh, hey, you called me and left a voice message for me. This is Montana. What can I help you with? And I was like, oh, I met you guys at the event back in Arizona. I don't know if you remember. He goes, who are you? And I was like, we met at the RC event. And he goes, no, I don't remember that. I was like, that's weird. 2 Montanas with Mobile Auto Detailing. He goes, yeah, I'm just joshing with you. I remember. I was like, oh, man, that's just
good
rude.
for him.
All right.
He got me so bad.
I love it.
You got to let that fish take the line and just take that baby.
Yeah, right. He sure did, too. He got me. Yeah. My old man came right out.
Yep. Mike swallowed a hook, line, and sinker.
I sure did.
That's awesome.
Hook, line, and stinker.
Exactly. Well, we want to tell both of them that we appreciate their input, and we enjoyed hanging out with them. And best of luck with your RC career. Feel free to reach out to us, and actually, congratulations on the new baby as well.
Right.
We love meeting new people, and it's a very enlightening experience for us as well. Because sometimes I think we find ourselves in that old hat where we're doing the same things, and then to get this renewed vigor of, oh my gosh, there's somebody excited about it, because I remember those days. They were many years ago for us, but I do remember those, being excited and wanting to go.
It was just last year, right, Mike?
Yes, just it was last weekend. What are you talking about?
Right, yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to make you sound old.
Older. 1 week older. Well, for those of you that are following us, make sure you check out our YouTube page. And for Michael here in Arizona.
And Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike back in Texas.
There you go. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.